Welcome back. Let's explore the Azure component. For building and orchestrating your data pipelines, you need the Data Factory resource to be created in your Azure account. Let's quickly navigate through the process of creation of the Data Factory resource, for which you need to click on the create option here, or else you need to directly search in this particular topmost search option, and here you can find a few of the resources by simply clicking on this. And if you click on this particular one, then you can able to see like, okay, Data Factories option, so that you can navigate through it and you can create it. And as an alternative option, like you can directly navigate through this particular resource manager, like resource group, and then you can simply click on the create option to create the Data Factory account. And here in the search in the marketplace, you can search for the Data Factory, and you can choose the Data Factory version 2 for proceeding with the creation of this resource. Enter the few details here, and you can choose the respective resource group. Resource groups are basically for categorizing your resources into segregated into one particular group. And you can either create one particular new resource group, or you can leverage the existing resource group, whichever you want. And here is the option to create a new resource group if you wish to segregate this particular resource associated with different groups. And you can enter this particular Data Factory name like ADF and V2 and Learning Data Factory. Like that, you can provide any of the name as per your naming conventions of the organization. And you can choose the respective region here. There are few of the regions which are available in the Azure marketplace, so that your resource will be created in the specific region. And you can choose the version 2, because version 2 would be the like a drag and drop kind of approach, and you can easily integrate with this. And earlier the Data Factory version V1, where actually we use it to create the JSON related structure to build the end-to-end pipelines. That is like a complex kind of way for integrating your pipelines. But now actually Microsoft has provided the automated way, like a drag and drop kind of way for automating your workloads, and they are providing the V2 version of the Data Factory here. And here is a place where you can navigate through the Git integration, and you can directly link your GitHub account for maintaining your code repository of the Data Factory pipelines and datasets and different assets directly linked with the GitHub account. And you can configure it later, and if you have the details already, then you can uncheck this particular box, so that you will be provided with this particular set of options to enter your details of the GitHub account. And the tile of the networking, where you can choose the public endpoint or private endpoint, and these details you can configure here for associated with the Data Factory. And in the advanced tile, you can choose this particular encryption for managing this particular Data Factory, like the customer encrypted key and all these particular settings you need to provide it. Like, okay, if this particular key you have stored already in the key vault, then you can enter the respective key vault URL, and key vault can be covered in the next session, and don't miss it out. And here are the place where tags we can provide here for better understanding, like a creator, and suppose for example, likewise I can able to provide the tags and created something like that, and I can able to provide like a different tags based upon my need. And I can able to create this particular billing, and this is associated with some specific resource of the data engineering or something like that. I can enter this particular tag, so that this can be easily monitored under my cost metrics and all. So you can proceed with the review plus create here option here, and then it will proceed with the creation of the resource, and it will completely check for the validation checks on top of this particular resource. If you missed any of the configuration settings in this particular resource creation, and then if everything is fine, the validation passed, and then you can go ahead and create this particular resource. Then it starts with the process of the initialization of the deployment process. It basically uses the deployment process as the ARM templates, like resource manager templates for creation of any of the resources in the Azure. And you can able to see the respective tile here, like the deployment is in process, and if you wish to download this particular template, then you can navigate through this particular template, and then you can simply download it. And so that this particular template can be useful for you to automate your deployment process via the console or through the PowerShell commandlets and all. So that can be used for your CI/CD processes and all that can be discussed in the DevOps sessions. And our resource is already got created, and we can able to see this deployment is completed as a alert message, and here also we can see that deployment is complete. Then navigate through this particular resource to access this particular ADF data factory. And this is the UI of the data factory in the Azure portal, and you simply click on the launch studio to open this particular data studio account. And here are the few tutorials which are already been provided with this particular Microsoft Docs in the Azure portal, so that you can click on this particular tutorials to navigate through each and every process of the creation of the pipeline, datasets, linked services, and many more. And you can able to see like different training modules and which are pre-configured with this particular data factory studio, so that you can click on each and every tile to learn about each and every module. And activity log, like this particular option which can be useful for us, like who actually modified this particular data factory account, and is there any upgradation processes happened, or who actually performed this particular different set of activities on top of this data factory and all. And access control is basically for granting the permissions to the users, and here we can provide the group level accesses for the organization, and we can simply add the active directory user, and then we can grant the permission to this particular resource, like a resource group level and resource level we can grant the permissions to it. And in the under the role assignments we can able to see like, okay, who are all is having the different accesses to this particular one, and we are simply granting the accesses to it. Let's cover this in the role management and IAM integrations in the Azure Active Directory session. And what are all the different tags we have created, those will be listed on here. And we have enabled with the two different tags for creation of the resources. So these two tags will be appearing on top of this tag section. And if you have any of the diagnose or solve problems, then you can able to see, because these are all like an administrative kind of thing, and you don't need to figure it out. Just you can directly jump onto the overview, and then you can click or edit this particular launch studio to open up your data factory account. Here it is. You would find this particular data factory interface has a user-friendly interface, and here you would find four different tiles initially, and they have added the learning center as a new recent option which they have integrated here. And in the home section we can able to see like, okay, you can use it for the ETL kind of design implementation using this particular data factory, and that can easily explain about each and every tile, like, okay, you can perform the ingest activities, and you can orchestrate for the scheduling of your pipelines, and you can apply the transformation on top of your data, and then you can store it to somewhere, and you can also configure your SSIS packages and all in this particular tile. So this is basically for explaining about this particular data factory module. And for implementation of any of the data factory pipelines, then you need to navigate through this particular other option. And in the other option we can able to see like, okay, whichever the pipelines you have created already, those will be listed on here, and currently it is a fresh state, so we can able to see like, okay, 0 pipelines and 0 data sets, 0 data flows, Power Queries are 0, and everything is 0. And suppose for example if you want to create any of the pipeline, then you can able to click on the plus symbol here, and then you can navigate through it, and then you can simply click on the pipeline so that it would create one particular new pipeline for you. And you can add any of the activities here, and then simply you can add up the copy data activity or something like that. It's simply the UI is very user friendly, and you can able to simply drag to the respective tile of the pipeline, and you can assign the respective name of the pipeline here, like some pipeline one or something like that, and this would rename this particular pipeline. And then once after you are done with your pipeline, then you can simply click on the publish all. But make sure that, okay, your source and sink datasets has to be connected. So before this you need to create one particular datasets. One is for source and another for the destination. Like for creation of the dataset, you can click on the plus symbol and add this particular dataset here, and here we can choose any of the datasets, like, okay, suppose for example like a blob storage account, like storage account is there in Azure, and you can choose this particular blob storage account, and you can establish the connectivity, and you can define which particular format of the files you have landed up in your input folder in the blob storage account. And you can choose this particular CSV option, and then you can provide it like a my source and dataset and input. I can provide it like this. And for the because this particular data factory is a fresh resource we have created, and here we could not see any of the linked service. Basically, the linked services would act like a connection between the Azure data factory to your actual resource, like our actual resource, which can be hosted in the Azure or your on-premises. For establishing the connectivity to from this particular data factory to your resource, then we need to create this particular linked service, then which can establish a physical connection route in the backend. So we can click on the linked service first, and then we can specify like, okay, linked service, and we are establishing the connectivity to the Azure Blob Storage account, and this is my input source or something like that. Okay, likewise, I can able to provide any of the option of creation of the linked service here, and I can specify the description here like, okay, source linked service connection, and we can able to create this particular key, or we can able to select from the subscription, and we can able to select whichever the storage account which we already have in our queue, so that it is establishing the connectivity to the blob storage account, and we can able to create this particular linked service, so that whenever you are linking up with this particular blob storage account for the next time, then it would be popped up in your dataset automatically. And then next thing is you need to select the folder structure there, and you need to provide the container, and you can able to browse on top of that particular one. Like I have already created the storage account and uploaded few of the data there, and here I can select this particular input option, and I can able to select this particular input data. And likewise, actually I can able to select this particular data.csv or something like that, and I can even select up till the directory, so that it would read all the files which are already been configured in this particular folder structure. And if we don't have any of the import schema to be attached from the external source or something like that, then we can click on the none. And if we have any of the source schema, kind of schema object, or like a schema element like a CSV or something like that, then we can simply upload it here. So that's how actually we can able to create this particular data set. And okay, just now we have created one particular data set here, and we can able to see the into the data sets, and we can link this particular in the pipeline. So we can attach the source, and the source data set can be listed down from the drop down list which are picked up from my data sets. And here are the few options which I can explain in the next video. And this is basically for giving the overview of this particular data factory UI. I am explaining it in a very faster manner, and we can navigate through this process of the creation of the sample pipeline in a very detailed manner. And in the sync, suppose for example you have created one more dataset here, like okay, that can be pointed out to this particular one. Like okay, I can clone it out, and I can point it out to the output folder. I can output and some data, and this time I will not create any of the file name or something like that. Okay, this is how actually I can able to create one more data set here, and that can be listed on under this particular section. So my target dataset which I have created now, so I can point it out to the data factory pipeline. So I can link this particular target dataset, and I can able to provide few of the configuration. So which particular format of the output it would be, like .txt or .csv or any of the format which we can able to map it out. And in the mappings we can able to see like okay, because this pipeline is establishing the connection from the source to the destination, so we can able to see like what are all the different columns which are already been there, those can be popped up here. And in the settings we can able to see like okay, we can able to set up the parallelism and a few other configurations attached to this particular pipeline. And once we are done with this, then we can apply the publish all to publish it into data factory. so that these changes will be pushed into our my data factory account, and this can be the results can be stored like a permanent store. You can see the alert message stating that publishing is complete, and so that my changes were pushed already into this particular data factory. And let's come back to this particular process of implementation of the data sets and the pipelines and the different various data sets. We can link it up to the data factory and all in a detailed session in the next session. And let's cover up this particular monitor section. Like, okay, you have created a pipeline already, and you made this particular pipeline to run. And this style can explain you which particular pipelines which are already been executed and which are all been succeeded. And you can able to see the Gantt chart, like time versus this particular pipeline, and when it started execution, and what are the different steps which are included in this particular pipeline execution. You can able to see under this particular monitor tile. And suppose you have created one particular pipeline and you have established a trigger, like, okay, it can be like a event based trigger or it's like a schedule based trigger. Then you can able to monitor those particular triggers options here, and we can detailedly cover up this particular triggers creation and trigger execution and all. We can able to see it under this particular tile. And if you want to configure any of the change data capture, like for picking up the incremental data, and whenever there is a change associated with this particular data elements, then those we can able to see under this particular option here. And integration runtime. So basically, suppose for example, if you have your on-premises data server is there in your side, and which is completely isolated from your Azure network, then you have to establish a link between your network to this particular Azure network, so that we can configure it via the integration runtimes, so that Azure can be communicated over to your on-premises for making any of the calls, and it can read the data by virtual link. So for which actually a piece of software need to be downloaded and installed in that particular machine, and you have to configure it via the integration runtimes. And the data flow debug, actually data flow is one important feature, like, okay, for leveraging the big data workloads or for building the pipelines like a data lineage pipelines. So there is a one step associated with the other pipelines, and where you can able to see the data flow. Data flows can be designed and implemented using the big data workloads like a simply drag and drop, so that those can be executed within the Spark context, and those execution runs you can able to monitor under this particular data flow debug option. And what are all the alerts and metrics, like the key alerts and all, like failure or something like that, and you can able to see the different execution of the pipelines and all the metrics you can able to see under this particular alerts and metrics rules. And you can configure different set of alert rules, so that those can be pushed to different mail accounts, so that whenever it reaches with the threshold, then it can immediately pop up one particular alert stating that, okay, this data factory pipeline got failed or something like that. These kind of alerts you can configure. And in the manage section, then here you can able to see like different the data factory kind of settings, and you can associate with the git configuration. You can see the integration runtimes, and you can configure any of the new integration runtimes. And here in the linked services, we have created one particular linked service for the blob storage account and all, right? So likewise, we can create a number of linked services, so that they can establish a physical connectivity to communicate to the source or target for picking up the data or something like that. It can act like a networking layer of the connection between the source and Azure and target and all. Actually, like it builds one particular link, establish it to the any of the source. And integration runtimes, I have explained about it, like we can configure a piece of software, and so that we will establish a connection between your on-premises to the cloud. And if you want to configure any of the purview account, then here is a place you can proceed with the purview account, and this is the latest feature which is launched in the Microsoft, and you can able to manage this particular one like a purview by creating the purview account and all. Git integration can be done via this particular option, and ARM templates, you can able to download this particular ARM template, so that it would be extracted with all the ARM templates of the resources which you have created under this particular data factory, and you can proceed with the DevOps kind of implementation for the CI/CD pipelines using the PowerShell invocation commandlets. And you can import ARM templates so that if you want to migrate your existing data factory resources like datasets, pipelines, linked services, and many more, then you can simply click on this particular import option and you can attach that particular zip of extract you have already been extracted from another data factory, and you can directly import in this particular option. And you can able to see the set of the triggers which you have created already, and global parameters for your pipeline parameters and all. These particular global parameters you can create, like, okay, what is my pipeline start time and end time, or pipeline name, and all these particular options you can configure as environmental parameters here so that it can be accessible in all your pipelines. And for the data flow libraries, like suppose for example in your Spark workloads, and if you need any of the third-party libraries and all, you can simply click on new to import the new library into this particular data flow. And if you want to enable any of the credentials to be provided for you to establish a connectivity to any of the source or something like that, then you can encrypt these particular credentials within the data factory so that it can be available for your pipelines. And customer managed key, actually you can create one particular key and associate with this particular data factory, and this particular option we have already checked in when creation of the data factory resource. And Airflow is the component, like they have provided like a preview, because in the open source world, like with the Airflow Python based workflow implementation can be implemented, right? So that also you can able to link it up here in the data factory so that it would execute your Airflow jobs as well. And in the learning center you can able to see and monitor any of the documentation which is publicly available in the Microsoft official document site. Please feel free to ask any of the queries in the comment section below, and I will make up one detailed session on the data factory for creation of the datasets, pipelines, linked services, and many more. Thank you.